Dershowitz asks a very simple question. What if the shoe were on the other foot? We see the persecution and the prosecution of Trump and his allies. Just imagine if the FBI and the Justice Department went after Clinton, for example, or Biden in a similar manner. It's hard to even imagine, frankly. And that is Dershowitz's central thesis. And he states many times throughout the book that he is indeed a liberal and he's a Democrat. He votes for Democrats down the line. And I tend to take him at his word when he says that because he has a, very open history in public life, and he's never really said anything that would have one confuse him for a conservative. And yet he is somewhat associated with conservatives just by association because he is in favor of protecting civil rights and civil liberties. And somehow in doing this in a kind of even-handed manner, he becomes associated with the right, which is really is unfair. Now, I suppose he's really a man without a home in a way because he is also maybe viewed as a little bit toxic by a lot of people on the right. He has, as I said, a long history. He defended O.J. Simpson, and he tends to take these kind of unpopular cases, and he defends Trump. He's not, Trump's lawyer, but he defends Trump in public, and he defended Trump during one of the impeachments in some capacity. But let me be even more precise. When I say that Dershowitz defends Trump, he doesn't defend Trump's policies. He defends Trump's civil liberties and his prerogatives as a president when he was president. And even in his post-presidency, Dershowitz tends to defend Trump insofar as he disagrees with some of the actions against Trump by the Biden Justice Department. And even so ridiculously by Trump's own Justice Department, because don't forget, the Mueller investigation was just that. It was a special counsel appointed by Rod Rosenstein, and so that's a whole nother story. But all these matters are touched upon in Get Trump. So let's get to it. Now, I mentioned the Mueller investigation, so let's look at a passage from Get Trump criticizing the way that investigation was conducted. It seems rather clear that the manner by which Stone was arrested in an early morning raid on his home in Florida, publicized by the media, was intended to apply pressure on him to cooperate. Ordinarily, a white-collar defendant would be allowed to surrender to authorities unless there is fear of escape, which does not appear to be the case here. There are many other irregularities with the Mueller investigation, but the impression one gets from the Mueller investigation was that they chose a target, which is Trump, and then they kind of applied a heat-seeking missile towards Trump and all his associates in order to just get them, hence the title of the book, Get Trump. Instead, Dershowitz suggests that we apply what he refers to as the Nixon and Clinton standards, which is to say that look at the way that Hillary Clinton was treated in a similar situation. And indeed, Clinton was in a similar situation. If you look at the email investigation of Clinton by the FBI, so you basically had what amounts to like a white-collar crime or white-collar infraction, that she didn't follow the State Department regulations. She was supposed to use an official government email, and she didn't. Her emails were subpoenaed by Congress, and she apparently destroyed the evidence. I mean, you can tell by the way I'm summarizing that I actually tend to believe that Clinton's crimes were significant, and she could have been prosecuted. But I can at least understand Dershowitz's argument, which is that she should not have been prosecuted, because the standard that he looks at in that situation is malicious intent, okay? And Clinton is a high-profile politician. That doesn't mean that she gets to operate by a different set of rules, but rather that one needs to kind of tread carefully and make sure that they're not acting in a partisan motivation. These types of crimes, these alleged crimes by Clinton and Trump, are really falling into a gray area where you could prosecute, but it's really a matter of opinion. And I think the general public has trouble understanding that. So to quote Dershowitz, statutory crimes such as conspiracy, obstruction, RICO, espionage, sedition, mishandling of secrets, and election laws are vague enough to allow partisan abuse of discretion. So that's really what you have to look out for is partisan abuse. Now, if the FBI had prosecuted Clinton and indicted her, I think there would be a lot of issues in terms of the public perception, whether that was interfering with the political process. And I think what Comey did just to explain Clinton's transgressions, at the very least, it let the public know, and then the public could decide in terms of voting. And likewise, if you look at the investigations of Trump, you could just as easily kind of let the public decide. I mean, it's even hard to keep track of how many different investigations of Trump there are. There was starting with the Russia investigation, and then there was the classified documents thing, and then there was the most recent indictment and indeed arrest in New York by Alvin Bragg for the related to Stormy Daniels. You're in danger of interfering with an election there because this was already in the public domain, and the public can, if they do not like Trump's behavior, then they're free to not vote for him in the primaries. There's really no need to arrest him for what is, once again, kind of just this white-collar crime, election law, something, federal election law is very complicated, and I think your average Joe on the street would not even really be able to explain what Trump supposedly did in that situation. Similar to Hillary Clinton. I mean, at least as far as Dershowitz is concerned, these are similar crimes. Again, maybe I'm a little biased, but I find Clinton's behavior to be more blatant. But I can understand that she was not indicted based on the fact that they could not perhaps prove malicious intent. At least that's what Dershowitz thinks. And another way to look at this is not just the Clinton standard, but the Clinton and Nixon standard. Interestingly, is what is argued in Get Trump, that you take a look at when Richard Nixon resigned, and that is like the prime example of presidential malfeasance. Whatever you think, on that period of history, what Dershowitz points out is that what makes it clear that perhaps Nixon did the right thing in resigning is that there was a bipartisan consensus that what Nixon did was wrong, and that if he didn't resign, then he stood to be impeached. Okay, and that is really a crucial difference when you look at the situations with Trump and Clinton, that there's hardly a bipartisan consensus in 2016 against Clinton, or right now against Trump. There's a Democrat consensus against Trump, but it's like there's a Democrat consensus against any Republican who's running, and vice versa with Clinton. But, the Democrats were pretty ride or die with Clinton in 2016, completely regardless of whatever malfeasance occurred surrounding her use of a private server and her destroying records subpoenaed by Congress. And likewise, Republicans largely support Trump. Certainly, I'm referring to the political parties, but also the voters. So if the voters support a former incumbent president, then you're kind of stepping out of your lane if you're going to prosecute them for something. Get Trump is a great book because it has something to say about all the great matters of the day, including January 6th. And of course, Dershowitz is appalled by what happened on January 6th. He thinks the election was fine and he has no problem with it. But he's not a big fan of the January 6th committee for a lot of very kind of finely tuned, precise reasons. And one of which is that he doesn't believe that Congress even has that power to, conduct this kind of investigation with criminal implications. So from Get Trump, Dershowitz says, "Our Constitution prohibited Congress from prosecuting named individuals. The power of Congress is limited to passing laws of general application that can be applied to specific individuals only by the Department of Justice and a grand jury." So why is Congress purportedly investigating crimes such as January 6th? It's not their role. They're supposed to make laws. So what are they even doing with the January 6th committee, or what were they doing? And Dershowitz, furthermore, criticizes the January 6th committee because it is not bipartisan, and he believes that such a committee should be, by tradition, bipartisan. And yes, they had a couple Republicans on there, such as Kinzinger and Cheney, but obviously they're only there. They're like handpicked by the Democrats, is the word that he uses. And Another frame that Dershowitz uses is that it's not about Republicans and Democrats. It's about Trump and anti-Trump. So by getting anti-Trump people on the January 6th committee, you really had no spirit of bipartisanship whatsoever. So that's just an example of how Dershowitz gives such fair-minded analysis of the events of our day. In other words, I just feel like I learned something reading Alan Dershowitz. So that is my high praise for Get Trump. So check it out if you haven't yet. My name is Michael McCara. Thank you so much for watching. I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel. And in the description, I have links to social media and my blog. I have an article on this that I would like you to read. Thanks again for watching.
I've only heard what love can do, and now I'm getting love from you. Make your vows, make your vows.